Hey guys, so it is a lovely Saturday morning, bit nippy out in the air, and I'm on my way to the gym. And today you and I are going to talk about Node.js, MongoDB and relational databases, because I had a subscriber, well, no, I don't actually know if this person is a subscriber or not. It doesn't really matter. They were just kind enough to leave a comment on one of my videos, and since they were, and basically the question was, what are my experiences working with Node.js and something like MongoDB versus a relational database? And that's an excellent question. And of course I'm going to make a video if somebody has a question. So let's get into it. Now, I've been working with relational databases for quite a while, and I've also worked quite a while with a range of different NoSQL databases. And just to define that, relational database means it's a holistic term for a certain type of database, such as, for example, Postgres and MySQL. Those two are probably the most famous ones. There are, of course, lots and lots more. And then you have NoSQL databases, which are, once again, it's a holistic term for a lot of different types of databases, such as Neo4j, which is a very nice graph database, which is absolutely amazing. And then you have MongoDB, which is a document database. And then you have something like Redis, which is a key value type of database. There's all kinds of different versions of it. And I don't know all of them, I'm going to be honest. But I have my favorites, and I've been working with them for a while, so I should be able to answer this question, I hope, to your satisfaction. So let's get into it. When it comes to, especially the question was aimed towards Node.js. In my experience, if you just want to skip my ranting about the pros and the cons, I'll just tell you immediately. You may have heard about the term mean stack. And that was, I don't know who came up with that, but it was really popular like 5 years ago. Basically, it stands for MongoDB, Express.js, Angular, and Node. I think that's what it stands for. Basically, that used to be the most popular Node.js setup or the stack for a full JavaScript project. And the reason why MongoDB got so popular is because it's a document database, which means that it's designed to treat all the records in its system, or the documents, as JSON. That's what's so great about it. There are drawbacks, and I'll talk about the drawbacks, but the power is that you can push anything into it. Like, you can literally push whatever you want into MongoDB, and it will just store it as a big JSON structure. That is extremely powerful. You can, and it's very easy to work with. I mean, if you want to save records or pull records out, it's the easiest thing in the world. That's what I love about MongoDB. It's so easy to get started. I would even I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I would say that if you are a complete beginner, if you want to have storage for your Node.js application, you should look into Mongoose, which is like probably the most popular abstracting API on top of MongoDB, which allows you to basically, in an effective manner, work with the database. So, and actually, I'd use that quite a while, quite often myself for project that I need, or rather projects where I need storage. That's usually MongoDB is usually my go-to. If I'm not doing something I'll talk about the limitations in just a moment, but usually I use Mongoose and MongoDB. And it's working very nicely. We use Scala and MongoDB at my company, for example. So, and that is, catering to thousands of users every day. So MongoDB is a really solid choice. And as I said, it's probably for a beginner the best starting point, I would argue, if you want to get into storage and databases. And then you have relational databases, such as I said, Postgres and like MySQL, and I was working with those as well now, and in Node.js as well. My personal opinion is that the APIs, like Mongoose, is very well structured. Like, that's a very nice library. Postgres has like Node Postgres, and there's also SQLize. I used SQLize, which is also a layer on top of the database, so you don't have to like write queries and all that stuff. It's basically just an API so that it's easier to work with the database. And I was on that project, or rather I used it in the early stages. It's gotten quite a lot larger since I used it, and it's getting better. So I think you could use that as well. But here's what I would like to tell you from a beginner's perspective. I'm going to make some videos of where I go into depth about the real pros and the cons about each database. Trust me, just bear with me, because this is such a big topic that I can't fit it all into this one video. But in my experience, a relational database is something that only really becomes important to you when you get to a certain level of complexity in your application. In other words, do you need something that is quick, or do you need something that's going to scale to millions of users? Now, MongoDB will scale to millions of users, don't get me wrong, but there are issues that you will find when your data model becomes more complex. One of those things is that MongoDB is it's not really good, it's not so good at data consistency. Because you have the freedom to put anything in your records, you can't really create meaningful relationships between different sets of data. An example is that in MongoDB, it's not that easy to basically, if you have a user and that user has a bunch of followers, it's not so easy for you to get all those followers without basically storing their IDs in an array or something like that inside of the document that the user model basically. And that might not be a problem for you, but that does require you to do some trickery with fancy queries or do two queries. So it's not that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Once again, it's a big topic. I'll get into it in another video. And in a relational database, you have that. You can very easily declare dependencies between different data sets. And that's pretty cool, actually. It's very, very useful at larger scale. So my personal suggestion to you, if you're right now starting out and you're not aiming to if you're not building a system for a client, like a company or something like that requires you to have a fairly complicated data model, then I would stick with MongoDB, because it's the thing that is going to be the most beginner friendly for somebody working in Node, and it's going to get you to where you need to go very quickly, and it will scale. Don't worry about it. It will scale up to millions of users, and most of the time it's not going to be a problem for you, these tiny little issues that I can explain in another video. If you are working with a larger company where data consistency is really important and you have a very complex data model, then I would go with the relational database. And that's because they have been around for the longest, and these databases are arguably they're proven their value. They are really stable. I mean, they're really, really powerful. Most of the large corporations run their systems with these types of databases. But that's my tip to you. And we'll talk more in depth about different database types in another video. I hope this was useful to you.